Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden. I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle, and I've seen almost nothing.
And here we are on our movie night, having just watched a double feature.
Lucky you, what a treat. You get two movies in one.
You get two movies in one. And in honor of my favorite spooky holiday, and in honor of just October in general, I made Danielle watch the original Halloween from 1978 and the new Halloween 2018.
Woohoo! Happy Halloween!
So what did you... Look, it is Halloween until, from September 1st to October 31st, and no one will convince me otherwise.
Well, here we are. We're in the thick of it, I think.
Yep. For sure. So what did you think?
What did I think? I actually really enjoyed these movies. I was a little worried about getting scared. Listeners who have tuned into our podcast regularly will know that horror movies are not so much my thing. Mostly because if they are far too scary, I end up getting nightmares. These two didn't really
give
do
you
that.
nightmares?
No.
Oh, good.
Clearly, I'm not afraid of serial killers.
A man with a knife?
A man with a knife. Who sometimes decides to bash people's heads in randomly with hammers, possibly grab a handful of teeth. You know, there was a real kind of that escalated quickly that happens between the first movie and then, the 2018 version.
I do think it's very interesting to see the difference between the difference 40 years makes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I honestly, Joy, I know that you would very lightly suggested that I spread them out so I don't freak myself out too much, and I did not follow that advice. I watched the 1978 movie, took maybe a 10-minute break to grab a snack, and then jumped right into 2018.
Well, now, to be fair, I did warn you that the 1978... Okay, so Halloween, for those of you who are new here, is the plot line is essentially the serial killer Michael Myers, who made his first kill at the age of 6. He killed his sister who was babysitting him. It's your typical final girl horror movie. A man comes in, wants to kill a bunch of horny teenagers, and he does so, except he singles one out and decides to leave her last. And, Laurie, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who, by the way, is one of my favorite people on the planet. I love her so much. Her and Carrie Fisher are like my two top women. Did you watch the one on Amazon?
I mean, I rented them.
Okay, so the one that I watched on Amazon, because I have the Shudder subscription, because of course I do.
Yeah, no, I just rented them both.
Well, the version they had, I swear, was taped from the television.
Oh, what?
Because I swear there were commercial breaks.
Okay, I did not have that viewing experience.
It was so strange because there would be the and then it would fade to black. And the sound would stop. And then it came back and the was still there. And I was like, could you not?
What's happening?
Just a little bit. So
they just wanted to break up the tension very nicely for you.
Yes. Nicely is a stretch. The 1978 movie ends with Laurie having survived the attack.
Barely. And we can talk about her poor choices.
We can definitely talk about her poor choices. But those definitely led into the second movie. But she is extremely traumatized at the end of the first movie, having just barely survived this attack. And the second movie really does sort of pick up exactly 40 years later of what would have happened to Laurie, what would have happened to Michael. And the reason I wanted you to watch the 2018 was because you don't have had to watch any other Halloween movie. It doesn't pick up any of the other sequels.
Yeah, no, I was reading a little bit of that very lightly as the movie was kind of starting up. The little IMDb trivia was playing off to the side. Oh, and I just read that they just completely ignored all of the plot lines and extra children, I guess, that are in the in-between movies. Did Laurie actually have extra children who then disappeared?
Well,
I feel like I very lightly saw that in the trivia that was playing right at the beginning of the movie.
So much happens in those sequels.
Regardless.
The Halloween movies for me are a little bit like the Saw franchise, where the first one I feel is a classic.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bunch of sequels that kind of don't really make sense. And then maybe there's another one that makes more sense.
Yeah. Regardless, all of that gets ignored. And like Joy said, movie picks up 40 years later. Laurie's incredibly traumatized. Valid. And the rehabilitation facility where Michael is being kept decide that it's a really good idea to transfer him in the middle of the night on October 30th.
What paperwork did they...
Could have picked literally any other day of the year.
Any other day. I mean, like at least the first movie had the decency to kind of be a day or two sooner, and then like the insane asylum, because I'm pretty sure it's an insane asylum at that point in 1978.
Right. Like mental institution would be a kind word for what that place was.
Yeah. We could call it that. We could call it a mental institution. We don't even get to see inside that one, which always makes me super suspicious because it's like they roll up and it's just like the I almost said inmates. The patients are just wandering the grounds.
Right. How did they get out? What happens? We never find out. The nurse just rolls up and they're everywhere.
Yeah. And she's just like, wow, they really just let him walk around, huh? And it like pitch black, middle of the night, and just a bunch of patients just wandering in the grounds. And like I appreciated so there were a bunch of callbacks in the 2018 to the first movie. One of those is like the bus topples over and then you do have these mental patients, walking around sort of dazed and confused.
Totally.
There was a couple other callbacks. There was, I think, the song that's playing on the radio in that scene was Laurie actually sang in the first movie. And that's sort of a little bit of a repeated theme.
And there are a couple of scenes that are mirrored nicely, like when Laurie's granddaughter is sitting in the classroom and looks out the window. Yes. That's clearly exactly where Laurie was sitting, red pencil included, right?
I know.
Which I thought was a red vine. Clearly, I've been watching too much Fringe. And I looked closer. I was like,
Fringe
oh no.
brain took over.
That's a red pen.
That's a red pen. She's not, in fact, drinking, like eating a Twizzler.
No.
That's not happening. And there's also, the teacher is talking about fate.
Oh, yeah.
The teacher is talking about the same subject. Now, it is a different author that she's talking about, I think, which I always found was interesting because, it's the granddaughter's story is different than Laurie's story.
They've updated the syllabus in the 40 years that have gone by, probably for the best.
Have they? Maybe. They're still talking about fate, but I guess they're talking about more authors who talk about fate.
Yeah. So I think the movies start off in a very similar fashion, but like I hinted at earlier, the second one, the 2018, I don't even know if I should say second because there were so many movies between them. So 2018.
Yeah, we could call it 2018.
Okay. So the 2018 movie escalates so quickly. Like, I think in the first movie, do we not even see him kill for like 40 minutes? I mean, maybe I'm making that up. But I think not including that the person who was driving the pickup truck and who he got the jumpsuit from, because I think that's one of the first people we see him kill.
I think that's one of the first people, yeah.
Yeah, like for a solid half hour after that, he's literally just heavy breathing, staring at Laurie.
Yep.
And
just stalks her, just spends the entire day stalking Laurie in that first movie, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, for 40 minutes.
Like that. For 40 minutes. I do like that both movies kind of do this thing where they start in daylight and they have this sort of slow descent into nighttime. sort of not including the flashbacks, right? Because like we do flashback to, Judith Myers' murder, which of course happened at night. But it is this interesting, like the day and the brightness, like keeps the monster at bay almost. And then as soon as it starts to get dark, people start to die.
Right. Like all of a sudden, Laurie is no longer questioning her reality. Her friends are being murdered. And then she stumbles upon their bodies, which again, does that happen in the last 15 minutes of the movie?
It does.
I mean, poor Laurie. She's just so in the dark. No pun intended. For so much of that first film. And then it just hits her like a train all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's that sort of metaphor for like sexual revolution that like was sort of coming to a close at the end of the 70s, like I just think there's a lot of like the way certain characters were dressed and things like that. And like the character types that surrounded Laurie, and Laurie is like this smart bookworm who doesn't really know how to people, which is like super cute, but also bless.
Right. Her friends make some light fun of her, but I think our overall were overall good-natured people.
Overall supportive. Yeah. I feel like they were overall pretty supportive. Like it all felt like friendly ribbing between friends. Like I never felt like, wow, why are you friends with this person?
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, there's a ton of gaslighting of Laurie where it's just like, people belittle her fears and belittle her concerns. And like, then when it turns out that she's right, that there is somebody after her and following her, that of course, that betrayal of like, but I was right the whole time and now I'm literally fighting for my life, you know, and all my friends are dead.
Oh, I mean, there's the through line between the two movies, right?
Yeah.
In movie one, she has to convince everyone that there is, in fact, someone following her. And it's not just the next door neighbor, I guess. Or some dude from school. Right.
Baxter or something. Whatever.
Right, of course. Or some person from school. Doesn't matter. And then in the second movie, the, quote, babysitter murders, which I kind of love that they gave them a name.
Babysitter murders.
Happened like, 40 years ago, and she's built up this entire bunker and then has to convince everybody, yet again, that the bunker is, in fact, a safe place that they need.
Yes, 100%. It always feels like Laurie against the world almost. Yeah. And like this is also where you get that mirroring with Michael Myers because he is completely disconnected from the world, except for Halloween night and trying to kill young women.
Yes.
Like,
and, they're lovers.
And they're lovers.
Well, I mean, speaking of, do we talk about some of the horror movie tropes? Because you're going to be able to list so many more than I did, but,
Do you want to go first?
Horny teenagers die and virginity saves you from serial killers was right up there at the top.
Right at the top. I mean, like, Laurie... Actually, no. When we first meet Laurie, she is wearing a skirt where the other two girls are wearing like jeans and pants and stuff.
Yes. And she has these opaque tights under her skirt too.
Yes. And it's this idea of like purity and innocence. And like that is the person that Michael has decided to focus on. This person who is not like liberated like these other women, which I also thought was a pretty funny metaphor. Because I was just like, well,
I enjoyed the liberated women. It's too bad they're punished for it.
I know. I mean, it's ultimately, it's so bizarre to me because it makes the most, and not to sympathize with a serial killer because that happens in the second movie, but like, we'll get there. It makes the most sense because like Annie is the most exposed, right? Where like all she really has is like a dog.
Yep.
And the dog is dispatched, unfortunately.
The dog.
By the way, spoilers. Did the dog die? Yes, the dog died.
Yes,
I'm so sorry.
Did die.
You know what was funny? I mean, look, it's never funny. But what was funny is when I was watching it, it was too dark on my phone to see the dog die. And I was like, look, my phone just saved me from this horror.
It was a really, really dark scene. Like I was watching it on the TV and I even had to squint a little bit. You know, a little bit of fear.com right there.
Yes. Yeah, no, my aesthetic was loud and proud.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, listen, was I upset? Did I want to see the dog die in HD? Not really, you know?
Not really.
So, fine.
Not really.
But that whole scene with Annie was played so well, where she's going from location to location. She gets trapped in the laundry room. She gets stuck in the window. She's going to the car. And the entire time you're like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there it is.
And there it
was.
And then there it was when she didn't notice that the car door was locked and then was unlocked.
I know.
Not her fault. She really wanted to meet up with Paul.
I know. Poor Paul. But then again, like Paul is somewhere going, where's Annie? And then he finds out that she's dead later,
I mean, and he's the only one that survived because he didn't go to her.
Because he literally was like, you need to come get me.
So really, he was very lucky. Can you imagine if he had showed up in 2018 as this person with the major survivor's guilt?
Can I tell you, I kept listening to the names because I was curious to see. So the first time I watched it, it had been so long since I saw the original that I didn't pregame. So like the first time I watched it, I only caught like a couple of the mirror stuff.
Uh-huh.
And this time I was trying to catch and see if there were like repeated names, like if Tommy became somebody, like the kid she was babysitting for, you know,
the kid who was bullying the kid she was babysitting for became somebody.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just like, great.
Which is kind of funny.
Cool.
Cool.
Getting back real quick to like, you would take care of them in vulnerability order. And I think one of the reasons he doesn't go for Laurie first is because she seems to be the smartest one of the three women. And I think he recognized that she wouldn't be as quote unquote easy to get. So he goes for Annie first, and then he goes for the poor cheerleader with her bow.
Oh, yeah.
She just wanted to be a cheerleader and like bone.
You know, I was curious about that as the movie was starting up because I couldn't tell whether the reason he didn't go for Laurie is because the two kids were there.
This is also a point. I mean,
I was wondering for a good amount of the movie whether that was the reason. Clearly in 2018, it really, really wasn't.
I remember that being an intense moment where he kills that kid in the truck. That teenager in the truck.
Yes.
And
yes, the one who just wanted to go to dance class.
Just wanted to go to dance class, man.
Oh.
Why you gotta kill the kid who just wants to go to
dance class?
I don't know. I would not have done that.
Yeah. No, it was interesting because I think in this first movie, it felt like he was very centered on Laurie, as you said, and was just killing everyone right around her. And so it was like whiplash almost going between the two movies, which again, I took a 10-minute break and then jumped right into the next one. So real whiplash going into the next movie where he was just killing left and right, almost not without thought, because who are we to understand the mind of Michael Myers? I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense. Like when he went into that house and killed that woman with the hammer, I was like, who's this woman? Is this woman relevant at all? Was she in the previous movie? She wasn't. He just decided to kill her and take her knife. And then he goes into this other house with this woman who just got off the phone with her friend and he offs her too. And I'm like, I actually was trying to figure out.
I was trying to figure out if that woman who got off the phone with her friend of like, I'll lock my doors.
It seemed like she was getting a warning, but they never explained. It seemed like she was
getting a warning, yeah.
Who is she?
That would require some research that I probably should have done before the podcast. Sorry. We're not a factual show.
It wasn't immediately obvious, and so I guess the writers didn't really want me to know. If they wanted me to know, they would have told me.
The funny thing is she said something like, thanks, Sally, and I was like, I swear I want to say that's a name of somebody, but I'm not coming up with it.
No one who is a main character.
No one who was the main character. I wasn't sure, but that house could have been one of the houses from that night in 1978. It was a little hard to tell just from the facade and the front door.
That's fair.
So it's a little difficult to say. I do wonder if the street being so active with trick-or-treaters made the killing a lot more prevalent. Although I did appreciate that he basically avoided the black houses. He was like, oh, that's a black couple. That's fine. They're just a doctor and nurse. They're fine. They're going to a party. I'm not going to bother with them. You know who I am going to bother with? This old white woman in this house.
Yes. Well, he did also tend to target the women who were alone, I guess.
Yes.
Unless he was forced to kill someone that one of these women was having sex with. Can we discuss Vicky?
Yes, let's discuss Vicky.
Poor Vicky.
I know, Vicky didn't deserve that.
Vicky didn't deserve that. Julian didn't deserve that. He's going to be traumatized forever. But my favorite Julian moment is when he just abandons Vicky. He's like, you know what? Nope. Runs out.
You are my favorite babysitter. However, I need to peace out. Thanks.
However,
that is one of my favorite parts in the whole movie.
He's like, if I stay, I'm going to die. And he tries to convince the boyfriend, whose name is escaping me at the moment, to just leave. Just go. If you stay, you're going to die, man.
Dave didn't listen.
Julian was right.
So, this brings us firmly into the second movie, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I really enjoy about 2018. The attention to detail of when you've been living with trauma for that long and how that affects you and how it affects your generational trauma and how you would hurt your family and hurt your loved ones. And it's just so good. I don't know. I don't have any other words for it. It's so well done. And the idea that, and the twist of the movie, which, by the way, spoilers. I mean, first of all, highly recommend everybody go out and watch at least 2018. If you want context, watch the 1978. Personally,
I do think they're better as a pair.
I think they're better as a pair. I don't know that you need to watch 1978. I think you get more out of it, but 2018 is a really good standalone Halloween movie, in my opinion.
I agree. I just think that you would miss out on the character of Laurie and everything, everything you're discussing right now, which is the trauma that she's living with if you don't see 1978.
Because she really is left as a shell of a woman. And I just really appreciated how women turn trauma into protection and how that was portrayed. Basically, what Laurie decides to do is, go full Sarah Connor with it and essentially train her, herself and her kid how to protect themselves with firearms, with anything they have, with running, with athleticism, with this huge sense of paranoia and just the justification of all of that fear because of what she lived through.
Yeah. And her Home Alone style house full of traps, right?
I know.
Which was honestly, so well thought out.
Right?
Just one specific example, as she's moving through the house, how shutters can close behind her as she walks through doors so she can ensure that no one creeps up on her from behind. That's smart. And that's Laurie learning from that first movie because, oh boy, did she make plenty of terrible decisions in that first movie. How many times in my notes did I put in all caps, always double tap? The number of times in that first movie where she got him with something, which included, by the way, a wire hanger that she refashioned from the closet. I really just such a determined, innovative woman.
Right?
However, you can't just him once with a wire hanger and then toss the knife next to him and walk away.
The first time she stabs him, it's a knitting needle.
Yes, so good.
And the second time she stabs him, it's a wire hanger. Mm-hmm. And I love how, this is going to sound weird, but I love how feminine those weapons are. Like, there's such beautiful feminine energy to being like random task. You know what I mean? Where like you find whatever's nearby and you try to use it against your assailant.
Yeah, yeah.
And like this, of course, informed the way she decided to live her life later on, where she said, you are the trap. You are vulnerable. You lure him in. You make him think he's winning. And then you literally set him on fire.
Literally. Yeah.
Literally.
It's not a cage. It's a trap. What a fantastic line. I love that perception growing up in that house.
Yes.
And growing up under those rules. Like it literally, it was a cage. It was.
There was a reason that her daughter Karen was afraid of the basement. You know, because in some respects, she understood exactly what that basement meant. It meant that you are cornered, that you cannot get out, and you need to lure him as close as possible to that basement. And it's almost like, you know, in boxing where you need to lean into the punch kind of thing. And it's like the scariest thing on the planet because someone's literally punching you. And it's like, yeah, put your face there.
But this is what you have to do. You have to get them to get close to you. Yeah.
You have to get them to get close to you so you can reconnect with your own punch.
Oh,
and it's like
great trap.
It's such a good trap. I just love the ingenuity of these three women fighting this guy. Like, you have this generational, you have a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. And you have each of them fighting in different ways because they were trained differently, right? Laurie is informed by her trauma experienced 40 years ago. Her daughter is informed by the trauma of being, of her mother being who she was and like needing to both unpack that and then repack that later. And then triple pack that because, oh, wait, mom's actually telling the truth. Maybe I should rely on my years of training.
And she did. She didn't forget a minute of them. And then, of course, there's the granddaughter who's grown up an arm's length away from it all.
And she, you know, just like with most grandkids, you know, like she was somewhat sheltered from her grandmother. I would be extremely surprised to know if she ever actually visited her grandmother's house. You know, like just with kids who grew up in traumatic situations, you know, whether it's neglect or abuse or anything. Like in this instance, oh, it's so hard to put a finger on it. It would be like a philosophy almost, like that Laurie's philosophy being forced upon her daughter is where you get the rebellion. I think in her granddaughter wanting, like having a legit relationship with her grandmother where it's like, you know, her grandmother is a little bit of a weirdo and is just like, here's $3,000, save up, you know, go to Mexico, which I think is so great.
But her granddaughter is able to do that with Laurie because her granddaughter didn't have to grow up in that house. Her granddaughter didn't have to go through all of the training, didn't have to go through the trauma. She grew up, like I said, an arm's length away, and that distance allows her to foster a relationship with her grandmother that Karen just doesn't have. Not in the same way, anyway. Like, obviously, they work well as a duo because they are able to, I mean, obviously, they didn't actually kill Michael. Somehow he's walked away because there's another movie coming. But
there is another movie coming.
they were able to protect themselves. And that's the philosophy, right? Laurie will never, ever be unprepared ever again at any cost. That cost was her family and her relationships.
Yes. And that's exactly right. That's what is so important to her, but also like that, you know, sort of cold comfort that she gets from knowing that she prepared her daughter. And she's like, you know, I prepared her for the horrors of this world. And if that cost us warm and fuzzies, that cost us warm and fuzzies.
Right. And it was worth it because my daughter's alive and she has a life and had a husband, has a daughter. Sorry. When Ray died, I don't know that I was expecting that to happen necessarily. I kind of thought this little family would survive.
Yeah, I thought he would last a little longer than he did.
I mean, listen. Well,
Oh.
this is really the difference between a person who has received Laurie's training and a person who hasn't. Because when that random police car drove up and he just walks into the dark to see who it is, I don't believe for a second that Karen would have made that decision. Absolutely not. Karen would have known you stay in the house unless the floodlights are on. That's why the floodlights exist.
That's exactly why the floodlights exist. I mean, like, this is also, this also covers, I love those floodlights because it goes back to the, the light is safe and the dark is not. And I just love that we bring that in for the last, I think it's like 40 minutes of the movie. Is this fight in the house?
Yes, I love that you point that out because there's that super kind of scary moment where Laurie is walking through the house, turning off the lights, but the floodlights outside are on because you have to lure him in, and he will come into the dark.
Yes, as long as you can appear vulnerable. Like I just keep thinking about her tour through that house. Like each room by room, as you said, like the doors, closing and locking behind her. Like it's such a good, it's just, she grows so much in this movie, which I think we lose in the 1978, like she doesn't really she doesn't get a character arc in 1978.
Well, no, I mean, we almost barely see her.
Exactly. We see her through Michael Myers' gaze more often than literally anything else. It's so nice to have her, that level of confidence, but also that same level of fear, because when you have to play a victim for so many years, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Yes. Where you're like, well, I draw him in by being vulnerable and by being, helpless, right? When she, in the beginning of the movie, like shows up to maybe shoot him as the bus is pulling away, right? But she can't do it. She can't do it. And she has to live with that. She's like, well, I could have shot him, but I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. And I should have, because it would have saved me a lot of trouble,
I mean, I guess, but I'm kind of with her on that, because that wasn't the right moment to shoot him. You have to corner him first. Otherwise, he's just going to walk away. At least the Michael we've come to know.
No, exactly. I mean, this is where I think, there's that franticness of wanting to be safe. But not being able to actually accomplish that until, it's one of those things where it's like she tried to do it too quickly. Right? Yeah. Because like there's that whole montage of her like shooting a bunch of mannequins just before that scene where she's like, yep, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go and shoot him. And that's it. We're just going to be done. When in fact, she's spent 40 years developing a plan to draw him into this house. And she was just like, what if I just went and shoot him? I just go kill him. Yeah, I could just do that.
Yes, a moment of weakness.
She couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
She couldn't do it because her plan was solid, and her need to feel safe took over for a second, or at least that's how I see it. Like this, I could have stopped him, and I didn't. But oh well, you know. And then she finds out that the truck, the bus was turned over, and it's just like, okay, now my plan can go into action. The literal thing I've been doing for 40 years, which, by the way, can we talk about how hilarious it is that she jumps out and scares her own daughter in her own house? Bang, you're dead.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely not a single shred of security. Oh,
how did I get into your house, Karen? How did I get in? You don't even have a security.
The side door was wide open. None of these windows have been secured. I mean, she wasn't wrong. Poor Ray. It's my house and I can defend her. Okay,
I know
Ray.
Jiu-jitsu. Okay. I took a course.
Oh, Ray. I mean, he didn't deserve to die, but boy, he could have done with a little bit of training.
But Oh, boy.
Who boy is right. Now, speaking of people who did or did not deserve to die, I think that we should talk about the quote, investigative journalists and their fledgling podcasts, as well as Dr. Sartain.
Oh, man.
Because...
Why don't we talk about Dr. Sartain first? Because I feel like he's a little more cut and dry.
Okay. All right. Dr. Sartain.
I just, there's the guy who, like, is tempted by the dark and, like, wants to know what it's about.
Just obsessed, wants to understand, wants to know what it's like inside that brain. What drives Michael?
What drives Michael? And, like, I think I love this juxtaposition between this doctor and Dr. Loomis, because I like that Dr. Loomis instantly was like, but I could be an agent of light where this is an agent of darkness. You know what I mean? And Dr. Sartain was just sort of like, but what's it like, though?
Yes.
But what does evil taste like?
Like, to the point where he puts on Michael's mask right after killing that poor police officer or sheriff or whatever he was. I couldn't really put my finger on it. Yeah, Hawkins.
Poor dude. He didn't deserve to die. Talk about people who didn't deserve to die.
He was just trying to get a little bit of redemption because he'd stopped Michael from being killed earlier, and he wanted to play a hand in Michael being killed, and, well, died too soon. R.I.P. Hawkins.
R.I.P. Hawkins.
Oh, Sartain. And meanwhile, Loomis, I like that you phrase him as an agent of light because...
I mean, that's how he thinks of himself.
This is your chaotic lawful, I suppose, or chaotic neutral you might go with here, because the agent of light whose reaction is, no, kill him. No. Kill him. Everyone's like, but he's a human, but he's a man. What if we spoke to him? What if we understood him and tried to get through to him? He's like, no, kill him. Kill him.
Just kill him. Like he dehumanizes him.
Poison him. Let me personally watch until his heart stops and then personally watch as his body is burned. Kill him.
I love that there's a recording of him saying that. I just think that's so great. I just love, like, how hardcore is it that it's just like, swear jar, that guy.
Like,
damn.
Absolutely not. No playing around. Kill him.
Kill him. Kill him at all costs. I mean, this is that great burn it with fire that, like, I understand this feel very much. Like, there are definitely, not necessarily people I want to kill per se, but there are definitely people where I'm just like, no, they deserve no quarter. Like, they either deserve jail for life or they deserve a death sentence, and that's just it.
Right. Or you no longer need to spend your mental or emotional energy on them, right? Whatever it is, you are done with
whatever
them.
It is.
And they are out.
Yeah.
And Loomis for sure hit that point with Michael. And I will say, I described it as a knee-jerk reaction before, but that wasn't really fair because he spent, 15 years with this child, right? And he said that he spent 6 or 7 years trying to get through to him. And after that amount of time decided, oh no, this is pure unadulterated evil and I am absolutely not getting through. But it's that evil that
there's nothing behind those eyes.
Nothing behind those eyes except for pure evil, which is what Sartain wanted to understand. Foolishly, might I add.
There's also a thing with, like, these silent serial killers in horror movies. Mm-hmm. Which, if anyone's ever actually done any kind of, like, historical research on serial killers in the last 50 or 60 years, they're never quiet.
Yeah, it's not like this.
It's not how that works. And, like, I got a little, it's so funny, like, the benefit of watching this in 2021, like, I got a little offended when they were like, I mean, he's nonverbal. He hasn't said a word in 15 years. And I was like, and? Like, I got so weirdly mad. I was just like, so he's nonverbal. What the hell? Like, look, he kills people. He killed people at the age of 6. Be mad about that. Don't be mad about the fact that he's nonverbal. It it's so weird. I got instantly like so protective of the nonverbal community that I was like, why this?
And just people, I don't know, Sartain and the investigative journalists really rubbed me the wrong way when all they wanted to do was try to get one word out of him. And I'm
Make
like,
him talk. Why?
There are other ways to communicate. And sometimes bashing someone's head in with a hammer is the way that you communicate. And what you're communicating is, I am a murderer.
I know we're not naming the movie episodes, but had we a name for this one, I think it would be I am a murderer. I am a murderer. No, like, you didn't need to, like, harp on the nonverbal stuff. It was so weird. I was like, look, he has many, many mental issues. The nonverbal, I feel like, is the most peaceful of all of them.
And the least concerning.
And the least concerning.
Absolutely the least concerning.
Why? Okay. Why observe a serial killer for over a decade? In both cases, Loomis and
for 40 years.
For 40 years. For 40 years. Why observe somebody for that long? And the biggest thing you think to mention is how nonverbal he is. When I'm just like, but how does he interact with the other patients? How did, does he react to other Halloween dates? Mm-hmm. Is he, does he just happen to wake up on Halloween? Does he just lie in what? I mean,
does he
Loomis
make eye contact? Does he eat on a regular basis? How did you get him outside into the yellow box? It's literally anything. Literally anything other than he's not talking. Don't care.
He's not talking.
Really don't care.
I'm sorry. I feel like we're harping on this, but this really rubbed me the wrong way watching it with this post understanding of the nonverbal community and how not messed up they actually are. Yeah. So
we can add this to the list. I feel like if you went back and listened to our podcast episodes, we have a whole list of things that do not equal murderer.
Right.
I'm nonverbal. That does not mean you're a murderer. I've never been loved by anyone. Does not mean you are a murderer. I have ADD.
Ted Bundy with a pituitary problem.
Does not mean you are a murderer.
You have a pituitary problem? Well, I guess you'll just die. No, I think I'm going to turn to murder. What? Why? What? No, don't do that. Why on earth? No, it just, look, nonverbal does not, you're right. We do have a list.
We have a list.
We can add it to the list. Nonverbal does not equate
things that do not make people serial killers. Having a hideous scar does not make you a serial killer.
I will die mad about the hideous scar, I think. I think that's, I don't know, it's a toss-up between the nonverbal and the hideous scar. Where it's just like, this isn't like a thing. Okay.
For the listeners, this is a callback to an Almost Human episode.
It is an Almost Human episode.
Go back and listen if you would like. But we were equally mad about that.
We were so mad about the oh no, you have a scar on your face. How dare you?
And now they're a murderer.
The gift of the Magi went murder, and I hate it. I hate it every time that happens. But we've harped on that enough. No, but we should talk about the podcasters, because also they have this problem of nonverbal, but also it's just constant. And I think you mentioned this while we were prepping for the podcast. It's just this constant of everybody telling Laurie to just get over it.
Yes.
And the podcasters are the first ones to do this in the movie. And they're just, he's just a man. What if you sat down and spoke to him like another person? Set yourself free, or whatever the hell it is they say.
No, they literally say that. Let us help you free yourself, is what they say.
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it with with the heat of 1,000 suns. And I'm just look, there's a time. Okay. Here's where my like, you know, there's trauma response, and then there's, you know, where the healing process hasn't quite taken hold, right? For Laurie, the trauma response is just constant, like a raw nerve. And I get it. I understand why.
Protect at all
we
costs.
Understand.
Yeah.
Yes, protect at all costs. I understand the reaction from like her daughter and her granddaughter of like, we just need you to stop, Mom, Grandma. Right. I just need you to stop. I just need you to let him go.
You're not welcome in this house until you seek the treatment that you need. That's a valid response from her daughter, like you're saying, because her daughter's grown up equally traumatized by this woman.
Yes. It is not a valid response from two investigative journalists who show up on her doorstep and decide to armchair diagnose her with this, like, tell us about when you regained custody of your children. And she's like, I never regained custody of my daughter, but you knew that.
Yeah. Ugh. Them and their mind games.
I hated it the first time I saw it. I hated it rewatching it.
And that moment when they're standing in front of the grave and Aaron is dictating that grisly murder in horrifying detail into his little, not a dictaphone, whatever you call that thing. Is it called a dictaphone? Who cares?
Who knows? It's
but
fine.
It's like
it doesn't matter.
It's like he thinks the murder is delicious. You know, it's exciting to him that this awful thing has happened. And so, I mean, I hate to say it, but they really got what was coming to them. I feel.
So there's a moment that happens when because we meet them almost immediately. I think they're almost the first people we meet.
Oh, yeah.
They're close. Yeah. They're close to the first people. They
absolutely are, because we're inside of the rehabilitation facility. And the reason we're in there is because Dana and Aaron, the journalists, quotes, are there to interview Sartain.
Right. So we meet them pretty quickly. There's this weird, like, siren call of having Michael Myers' mask. You know, that threatens to wake him up almost, you know, and it's this, first of all, how are you in investigative journalism where you just like borrowed that from like the police, whatever.
Right. So weird. And then he holds it up in an attempt to
make him talk.
To literally make him talk. We can't talk about it again.
I know.
But
I know.
That was a poor choice, and Aaron got what was coming to him. I feel a little bit more bad for Dana because Aaron was the one who held up the mask.
I mean.
And I don't love to see a woman brutally murdered ever.
I will always feel bad for the female victims of Michael Myers.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like I will never feel good about a woman dying at Michael's hands.
I'll never feel good about, especially a woman dying in one of these slasher movies. Like they're always harshly made to suffer.
Yeah.
For what appears to be no reason, right? When in fact it's either like being liberated women, quote unquote, or being open or being understanding or anything like that. Like, you know, I don't think she was a bad person. If anything, I think she was more down to earth almost.
Oh yeah.
Than she was.
She was definitely the more appealing of the two. She knew why they were there.
I
did not like Aaron. I was fine with her.
God, I mean, I think even she was like, could you not? When he like opens, I don't even remember the question he opened with, but it was just like, 40 years ago today, Michael Myers killed 5 of your friends. And how does that make you feel? And she like turns to him like, could you not?
What if you didn't? We already know how that makes her feel.
I know.
Ask a different question, dude.
Ask a different question. Like, you know, I think there is this weird entitlement privilege that these two had walking into, you know, this weird like social media thing of we were a part of solving a big case, which does legitimately happen. And I'm not downplaying the actual sleuthing of the internet because it has helped.
Oh, of course.
Solve several cases.
These two are not sleuthing because the case has been solved. They're speculating. They're speculating on these grisly murders and enjoying it.
Yes.
Or at least Aaron
getting
was.
off. They're getting off. They're on this nonsense, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Jamie Lee Curtis. Her mother was Janet Leigh. Now, I don't know if you know who Janet Leigh is. I know you're not a horror fan. Janet Leigh was a scream queen from the Psycho movies.
Oh.
Sorry, I say movies. From the first Psycho. She was in the first Psycho in 1960. And when Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to break into acting, one of the things she tried to do was she kind of like didn't quite rely on the fact that she was Janet Leigh's daughter, but she was just like, I could do horror if you want horror. You know what I mean? And then like people found out who her mother was, and then they were like, yes, of course.
Of course you can.
I believe that was her first film. Her first debut film was Halloween.
Wow.
And like and she basically picked up in her mother's footsteps, which I just think is super cool because it's like, I think their screams are also really similar. Like, I know that's a weird thing to say, but like, I just love Scream Queen duo, Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, I think they just, I love it so much. That was one of my one more things. Do you have to think of a one more thing?
Well, I was gonna pick a silly one more thing.
You can pick a silly one more thing. Go for it.
Okay, so my silly one more thing is that another reason Vicky didn't deserve to die, girl loves bubble tea. And I noticed that she was drinking it, and it made me want some. Speaking of people that I was really angry at, and I did kind of wish met a more terrible end, but not really, because I don't really wish that on anyone. Cameron.
Yeah.
Cameron, man.
Deserved every inch of the spike. Actually, okay. So here's another one more thing that I will.
Cameron's the first guy. The spike was Oscar. No.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the spike was Oscar.
Oscar was the one who was hit by the spike. Who, listen, that was an unwarranted kiss. Wasn't great. Did he deserve to get spiked through the center?
Cameron also deserved. Cameron's the boyfriend, yeah.
Cameron's boyfriend, yeah, who threw her phone in the pudding. And thus put her in danger for the rest of the movie. I mean, what a terrible thing to do with a fight. Oh, your phone, you're always paying attention to it instead of me, so I went and kissed this other girl. And then he tosses her phone in the pudding.
It's just so much, it was so much gaslighting in such a short amount of time.
Yes! It was intense. I was not expecting it.
I remember watching it for the first time and being like, oh,
Cameron.
Oh, Cameron. Because I don't know if I've actually told the listeners this, but my least favorite plot point is a cheater line plot point.
Yes.
Where the woman, usually it's a woman, clues in that something's wrong, and then the man has to like lie and lie and lie and lie. And then eventually it comes out that no, actually it was the thing that the woman thought the entire time.
Wait, and even worse, it was the thing the woman thought the entire time. And it's her fault for being distant, for not paying enough attention, for whatever it is that she isn't doing that she was supposed to be doing. That's my least favorite.
Of course. And this is here's a PSA for some of our younger viewers. Femme, mask, male, female, doesn't matter. If someone cheats on you, it is not your fault.
Nope. Never your fault.
Cheating is a choice.
Yep. And
Cameron made that choice.
And you know what? I'm really mad that the dog in the first movie died and Cameron didn't. That's all I have to say about that.
Maybe that's the summary for this episode. We yell for an hour about the fact that the dog in the first movie died and Cameron didn't. Cameron was such a disappointment. Right? Like, because you think the granddaughter is like getting her stuff together. And then she's like dating this guy who like she invites to meet the parents and like, have the whole thing and meet the grandmother who's like, he's heard a lot about.
They had a pretty successful little dinner, right? They go to that Halloween party, which was way more fun than any high school party deserves to be, by the way.
It always is. It always is. The movies always make those look way cooler than they actually are.
In their Bonnie and Clyde with a twist.
which I really enjoy. Okay, so here's my other one more thing.
Okay, I'm
My
ready.
other one more thing is that where the first movie was very sort of firmly rooted in, a very, for lack of a better description, binary type of relationship.
Or
where,
traditional, right?
Traditional.
Quotes.
A traditional
yeah.
binary. Yeah. A traditional binary of men do this and women do this in terms of like sexual revolution for the late 70s. Like it was progressive for its time, while I still think being, somewhat reductive in that way, which again, and I don't blame the movie for that. It's definitely was progressive for the time that it existed.
Yeah, 1978.
I didn't expect, look, I didn't expect a lot. But what I like about 2018 is how diverse it is and how, like, you could definitely clock more queer relationships or more queer questioning relationships among the younger people. And you could clock stuff that doesn't necessarily need to fall into a category among, I do think there's a partnership between Karen and Ray. Like, even though Ray is kind of not great, but like, I do think they have. Look, we didn't crap on Ray the entire time. We're not happy he died.
He just wasn't well trained.
He just wasn't well trained.
Unfortunate.
Everything else, man, he seemed like a fairly competent father.
Yeah.
Like Karen seemed to really, still enjoy his company after
doing
what I
stuff
assume
around the house, being very supportive of her, telling her that not every problem is a problem she can solve, and Laurie certainly isn't.
I do, like, I think this movie was surprisingly progressive. And I don't know if it planned to be that way. But I do think, like, in terms of, like, a, quote, sexual revolution, I think we had a lot more representation of alternate. Like, I do think Oscar was pansexual, even though he totally joked about it while they were in school. And, like, I'm just sitting here like, I know there's such a thing as gay chicken, but man, what if it was just, like, true about this one dude?
I would accept that headcanon. I also really enjoyed seeing the moments where Allison gets to push back and be herself and make her choices.
Yes. Completely agree.
When Cameron is trying to gaslight her and she just walks away.
She just walks away.
You know what? No. She walks away. When Oscar tries to force that kiss on her towards the end of the movie, and she just flips the bird, walks away. Absolutely not what I was asking for.
Not what I came here for, dude.
No.
Like, yeah, we're even, like, we had a fight. Doesn't mean I want you.
Nope. We were just walking home, man.
We were just walking home. But I love that Oscar's first thing is like, please don't tell Cameron. And in my head canon, it's just like, because he has the hots for both of them.
Got the hots!
And he doesn't want to ruin his chances. Like,
he's hedging his bets.
He can be a disaster bisexual.
Oh, and then he died. Now I'm even more sad that he died.
I mean, look, there wasn't a lot that was redeeming about Cameron and Oscar. Let's be real. I love Julian.
Me too.
Like, I love Julian so much. I feel like Julian just really, I don't know. I was just so happy to see him.
He's so warm and cute and funny.
He's so warm and cute. And y'all are coming over to smoke weed. I know what you're coming over here to do.
Practical. As I stated earlier, get out. If you don't leave, you're going to die.
Feels like an ending to me.
All right, amazing. Julian, the real MVP. Always listen to Julian. With that, listeners, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what is your favorite Halloween costume of all time and why? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/BachPod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.